You finally did it. And before your mind starts searching for proof on the outside, I need you to understand something. Heaven often celebrates a victory before earth knows what happened. God smiled before people clapped. God approved before results appeared. God saw the moment you did not quit. God saw the moment you did not chase. God saw the moment you did not become cruel. God saw the moment you chose peace, when the old wound wanted control. That was not small. That was the moment the old cycle lost its authority over you. You may still be waiting for doors to open. You may still be waiting for people to understand. You may still be waiting for the visible sign that confirms what your spirit already feels. But the first proof of victory is not always external movement. Sometimes the first proof is internal freedom. The same words no longer break you. The same memories no longer own you. The same fear no longer leads you. You walked through the fire and did not lose the part of you God was protecting. That is why this message found you. Not to hype you up, not to make you pretend everything is perfect, but to help you recognize what heaven has already recorded. God smiled. Chosen one. You won. And I know those words may feel difficult to receive, because when you look around, some things may still look unfinished. The room may still look the same. The responsibilities may still be on your shoulders. The questions may still be unanswered. The people who misunderstood you may still have never apologized. The door you prayed about may still not be fully open. So part of you may be wondering, if I really won, why does it still feel so quiet? If I really crossed over, why am I still tired? If heaven celebrated, why did nobody around me notice? And that is exactly why you need to hear this. Because the victory God is showing you right now is not the kind of victory the world usually recognizes first. The world calls it victory when the money arrives. The world calls it victory when the relationship changes. The world calls it victory when the crowd applauds. The world calls it victory when the person who doubted you finally has to admit they were wrong. But heaven sees deeper. Heaven sees the moment your heart changes before your circumstances do. Heaven sees the moment a wound loses its voice inside you. Heaven sees the moment fear knocks on the door and you do not let it sit on the throne anymore. Heaven sees the moment you stop negotiating with the version of you that only knew how to survive. That is why this victory may feel quiet. It did not begin around you. It began within you. And chosen one, the victory that begins within you is the victory that no person can take away. This is why the last part of your journey may have felt so strange. You may have noticed that the things that used to trigger you do not pull you in the same way anymore. You may still feel the sting, but it does not control the whole day. You may still remember what happened, but the memory does not command your identity like it used to. You may still hear the voice of doubt, but it no longer sounds like the voice of truth. That is not emptiness. That is freedom, learning how to breathe inside your body. That is peace entering places where panic used to live. That is God showing you that the battle did not destroy you. It revealed what He had been building. Stay with this message until the end, because there are things you need to recognize before you walk into the next season. You are going to understand why your victory felt invisible. You are going to understand what heaven was actually watching. You are going to understand why your exhaustion did not mean failure. You are going to understand the hidden sign that proves the old cycle lost authority over you. And most importantly, you are going to understand how to stop living like someone who is still waiting to be approved when God has already smiled over your endurance. This is not about rushing you. This is about helping you receive what your spirit already knows. Because if you do not recognize that you have crossed a line, you may keep acting like you are still trapped behind it. And you are not. You are not where you were. You are not who you were. You are not as easy to pull back into confusion. You are not as available to chaos. You are not as hungry for approval from people who never had the authority to name you. Something has shifted, and the reason it feels strange is because your old identity is losing its grip. For a long time, you may have thought victory would feel like celebration right away. You thought it would feel like relief, with no heaviness attached. You thought it would feel like proof, movement, open doors, and clear answers. But sometimes, when God brings a chosen one across an invisible finish line, the first thing they feel is not joy. It is stillness, because the body is still trying to understand that it does not have to brace for impact anymore. The mind is still checking for danger. The heart is still asking if it is safe to hope again. You have been in survival for so long that peace may feel unfamiliar. You have been carrying pressure for so long that rest may feel suspicious. You have been misunderstood for so long that being seen by God may feel almost too tender to receive. But listen carefully. Peace does not always arrive like a wave of emotion. Sometimes peace arrives as the absence of an old reaction. You notice you did not explain yourself. You notice you did not chase the person who pulled away. You notice you did not go back to the environment that drained your spirit. You notice you did not punish yourself for needing space. You notice you did not let one bad moment convince you that your whole life was falling apart. That is not small. That is evidence. That is the mark of someone who has been trained in silence. That is the mark of someone who has been formed in the wilderness. That is the mark of someone who has learned that every feeling does not deserve obedience. The old you might have reacted quickly. The old you might have begged to be understood. The old you might have opened a closed door just to avoid the ache of being alone. The old you might have confused chaos with connection. The old you might have thought that being needed was the same as being loved. But this version of you is different. You may not feel perfect. You may not feel fearless. You may not feel completely ready. But you are different. And heaven saw the difference before anyone around you knew how to name it. That is why the finish line was invisible. Because the test was not about whether everyone would finally see your worth. The test was about whether you would still remember your worth when they did not. The test was not about whether every door would open immediately. The test was about whether you would keep your heart open without forcing doors that God had not opened. The test was not about whether you would never feel pain again. The test was about whether pain would become your master. And it did not. It hurt you, but it did not own you. It slowed you, but it did not stop you. It pressed you, but it did not make you betray what God placed inside you. You may have cried. You may have questioned. You may have had nights where your faith felt like a small candle in a very large room. But the candle did not go out. That matters. That is why heaven celebrated. Not because you were loud, not because you were seen, not because you had an audience, not because your life looked impressive from the outside. Heaven celebrated because you kept choosing God in places where nobody would have known if you gave up. You kept choosing light when bitterness offered you a home. You kept choosing restraint when anger offered you a weapon. You kept choosing healing when the wound wanted an identity. You kept choosing purpose when delay tried to convince you that nothing was happening. And chosen one, there is a kind of strength that only heaven can measure. People can measure what you own. People can measure what you post. People can measure what title you carry. People can measure who stands beside you. But people cannot measure the moment you almost went back and did not. People cannot measure the prayer you whispered through tears. People cannot measure the strength it took to stay soft after being mishandled. People cannot measure the courage it took to stop performing for love. People cannot measure the discipline it took to let God defend what you wanted to explain. But heaven saw it. God saw it. The Father saw the moment your hand reached for the old door and then pulled back. He saw the moment your heart wanted revenge, but your spirit chose release. He saw the moment you wanted to shrink, but something inside you stood still. He saw the moment you wanted to call yourself a failure, but a deeper voice said, "No, I am still becoming." He saw it, and if nobody else celebrated that, heaven did. There are records in heaven that human beings do not have. There are moments in your life that were never witnessed by people, but they were witnessed by God. There were battles you fought without language. There were decisions you made that looked ordinary from the outside, but in the spirit, they were turning points. One conversation you refused to enter, One temptation you refused to feed. One apology you never received, but still chose not to let poison grow in your heart. One season of loneliness where you did not run back to what was familiar just to feel wanted. One day where you woke up heavy, but still moved with integrity. One moment where you stopped asking, "Why me?" and started asking, "What are you forming in me?" Those moments built something. They built steadiness. They built discernment. They built sacred patience. They built the kind of inner authority that does not need to announce itself every 5 minutes. And that is why you are feeling a change. You may not have words for it yet, but you know something is different. Your spirit is not reaching backward the same way. Your heart is not opening to every voice the same way. Your mind is not believing every accusation the same way. Your peace is becoming more expensive. Your energy is becoming more protected. Your yes is becoming more sacred. Your no is becoming more honest. And that is not pride. That is growth. That is not coldness. That is maturity. That is not you becoming distant from love. That is you becoming unavailable to what kept draining the love out of you. Some people may not understand this version of you. They may call it distance. They may call it pride. They may call it acting different. They may call it being too sensitive. They may call it changing. And the truth is, you are changing, but not in the way they think. You are not changing into someone heartless. You are changing into someone whole. You are not changing into someone arrogant. You are changing into someone anchored. You are not changing because you forgot where you came from. You are changing because God did not bring you through all of that for you to keep living like the wound is still in charge. That is why you almost missed the victory, because it did not look like noise. It looked like boundaries. It looked like calm. It looked like silence. It looked like not needing to prove what God already knew. It looked like sleeping with a little more peace. It looked like letting the phone stay silent. It looked like walking away from the argument before it stole your spirit. It looked like choosing not to rehearse the pain for the 100th time. It looked like feeling the emotion without letting it become your direction. And there is one sign I want you to pay attention to. The strongest sign is not that you never feel hurt anymore. The strongest sign is that the hurt no longer has the same access. It can knock, but it cannot rule. It can speak, but it cannot name you. It can visit, but it cannot build a house inside you. That is victory. That is what heaven saw. That is what God smiled over. Because the thing that once had authority over your reactions is losing its throne. And when an old cycle loses authority over a chosen one, heaven pays attention. Because that means a generational pattern just met resistance. That means a familiar spirit of fear just met someone who will not bow the same way. That means a wound that wanted to become an identity just met the grace of God inside a person who refused to surrender their future. This is why you are not just surviving. You are crossing. You are crossing from reaction into wisdom. You are crossing from approval hunger into divine confidence. You are crossing from emotional chaos into sacred steadiness. You are crossing from the old story into the person God was forming beneath the pain. And still, I know there is a part of you that may feel tired, maybe more tired than you expected to feel after winning. You thought victory would make you instantly energetic. You thought breakthrough would feel like running through a field under open sunlight. But sometimes, after a long spiritual battle, the first feeling is not energy. It is deep exhaustion. Not because you lost, because you carried more than you realized. When a person has been strong for too long, even relief can feel heavy at first. When a person has been bracing for too long, peace can make the body tremble. When a person has been surviving for too long, safety can feel unfamiliar. So do not judge your tiredness. Do not call yourself weak because you are still catching your breath. Do not say, maybe I did not really win, just because you still feel the weight of what you survived. The tiredness is not proof of defeat. Sometimes tiredness is proof that you made it through something real. Sometimes your soul is not asking you to fight harder. Sometimes your soul is asking you to finally stop living, like the war gets to define every room you enter. Chosen one, you did not fail because you were tired. You won because you stayed faithful while tired. You won because you kept your heart from turning to stone. You won because you kept listening for God when silence felt louder than answers. You won because you did not let disappointment make you dishonest. You won because you did not let betrayal make you become a betrayer. You won because you did not let rejection convince you that you were unworthy of love. You won because somewhere inside the pressure, you kept a sacred yes alive. Maybe that yes was small. Maybe it was trembling. Maybe it did not sound confident. Maybe some days it sounded like, God, I do not understand, but I am still here. That was enough. God can work with a trembling yes. God can strengthen a tired heart. God can breathe on a person who feels like they are standing with nothing left but obedience. And that is what He did with you. He did not wait until you were flawless to smile. He did not wait until you understood everything to call you faithful. He did not wait until people approved of you to recognize what He had formed in you. He saw you in the hidden place. He saw you in the pressure. He saw you when your voice shook. He saw you when your faith had tears in it. He saw you when you kept going without a clear sign that anything was changing. And now something has changed. Not just around you, in you. The old panic is not leading the same way. The old shame is not speaking with the same authority. The old fear is not sitting on the throne the way it used to. The old need to be understood is losing its power. You are becoming free from the courtroom of people. And that matters because in the next part of your journey, you cannot carry the same addiction to human approval and still walk in the fullness of what God is preparing. There are people who saw your scene, but never saw your heart. They saw the distance, but not the exhaustion that made distance necessary. They saw the silence, but not the wisdom that kept you from speaking too soon. They saw you change, but not the pain that made the old version impossible to keep carrying. They saw pieces. God saw the whole thing. And this is where many chosen ones get stuck. They keep waiting for people who only saw pieces to validate the whole story. They keep waiting for a broken room to announce a sacred identity. They keep waiting for someone who misunderstood the process to confirm the purpose. But, chosen one, God did not bring you this far for your peace to depend on the verdict of people who were never assigned to judge your soul. The celebration that matters already began. The smile that matters already happened. The record that matters already knows what you endured. So, breathe this into your spirit. You crossed something. You may not be able to explain it fully yet. You may not be able to show it to anyone yet. You may not have the external evidence you hoped for yet. But you crossed something. The old cycle does not own you the same way. The old wound does not speak as loudly. The old fear does not have the same throne. The old version of you is not dead because you hated them. That version is finished because God used that version to keep you alive. And now He is calling you higher. Do not despise who you had to be to survive. But do not keep wearing survival as your permanent name. You are not just the person who made it through. You are the person who was formed through it. You are not just the one who endured the wilderness. You are the one who learned how to hear God in it. You are not just the one who was overlooked. You are the one whose roots grew deeper while no one was watching. And roots matter. Roots are not visible, but they decide what can stand. Roots are hidden, but they determine what can survive storms. Roots are silent, but they hold the future of the tree. That was your hidden season. God was not wasting time. He was building roots. He was building depth. He was building a kind of strength that would not collapse the moment blessing arrived. Because there is a version of success that destroys people who were never formed for it. There is a version of visibility that exposes people who never developed roots. There is a version of love that overwhelms people who never learned identity. There is a version of provision that distracts people who never learned purpose. So God did not just prepare things for you. He prepared you for things. And that is why heaven celebrated. Not because every promise has fully appeared yet. Not because every enemy has admitted the truth. Not because every wound has lost all tenderness. But because you are not the same vessel. You are not the same person who used to run from silence. You are not the same person who used to confuse intensity with love. You are not the same person who used to let guilt control every boundary. You are not the same person who used to believe that being chosen meant being constantly available to people who drained you. God has been teaching you a new way to carry your heart. A cleaner way. A wiser way. A more peaceful way. And now, the invitation is simple, but it is not easy. Live like someone who has already been seen by God. Live like someone who does not need to perform for approval. Live like someone who can be misunderstood and still remain obedient. Live like someone who can be tired and still be faithful. Live like someone who can be gentle without being available to destruction. Live like someone who knows that heaven celebrated the private victory even when earth had no idea what happened. And if you need one simple act right now, do it inside your spirit. Do not move your body. Do not force an emotion. Just picture an old door in your mind. On that door is written the name of the cycle that used to pull you back. Fear, approval, rejection, anger, shame, chasing, self-doubt. Whatever name rises, let it rise. Now picture your hand resting on that door for the last time. Not with hatred, not with panic, not with a need to prove anything, just with quiet authority. And inside your heart, say, I survived this room, but I do not live here anymore. Let that sentence settle. I survived this room, but I do not live here anymore. That is the sound of someone crossing over. That is the sound of a chosen one, recognizing the hidden finish line. That is the sound of the old cycle losing access. And if it feels right, later, you can leave one simple sentence in the comments. God smiled, I won. Not as performance, not as a slogan, but as a marker, a witness, a declaration that you are no longer calling yourself defeated in a place where God has already called you through. Because this is where the next revelation begins. If heaven saw what people missed, then the people who misunderstood you were never the final judges of your story. They saw the scene. God saw the heart. And in the next movement of this message, you are going to understand why the courtroom of human opinion cannot hold the record of a chosen one whose name has already been spoken over by God. For now, receive this. You did not fail because you were tired. You did not lose because you cried. You did not fall behind because the process took longer than you expected. You did not miss God because you had questions. You did not ruin the promise because you needed time to heal. You made it through the part that was designed to make you forget who you were. You made it through the silence. You made it through the misunderstanding. You made it through the season where your faith had to grow without applause. And all of heaven saw it. All of heaven knew. All of heaven celebrated the moment you became stronger than the thing that used to control you. God smiled, chosen one. You won where it mattered first. And if you won where it mattered first, then you need to understand something that may free you from a weight you have been carrying for too long. The people who misunderstood you were never the final judges of your story. They saw the scene. God saw the heart. They saw one moment. God saw the whole road. They saw your silence and gave it a name that was never true. God saw the restraint it took not to speak from the wound. They saw your distance and called it pride. God saw the exhaustion that made distance necessary. They saw you change and assumed you became cold. God saw you becoming whole. They saw the outside. God saw what it cost. And chosen one, this is where your freedom must go deeper. Because if you are not careful, you can survive the battle, cross the invisible finish line, and still live trapped inside the courtroom of human opinion. You can be approved by God and still feel tormented by people who never understood your assignment. You can be seen by heaven and still ache because certain people on earth never recognized your heart. You can be free in the spirit, but still keep returning in your mind to old conversations, old accusations, old misunderstandings, trying to prove that you were not who they said you were. But God did not bring you this far for your peace to depend on a courtroom that never had the full evidence. There was a record of your faithfulness that no human opinion could erase. There were details heaven recorded that nobody around you knew. There were tears that never touched another person's shoulder, but God counted them. There were prayers you whispered so quietly that even you wondered if they mattered, but God heard them. There were moments where you wanted to defend yourself, but the Holy Spirit held your tongue. There were moments where you wanted to expose what really happened, but wisdom told you to let God be the witness. There were moments where you wanted someone to understand your side, but deep down, something holy was teaching you that being understood by people is not the same as being known by God. And that lesson was not easy, because you are human. Of course it hurt when people misread your heart. Of course it hurt when people believed the wrong version of the story. Of course it hurt when someone saw your reaction, but never cared about the wound that came before it. Of course it hurt when the people you would have defended in public left you alone in private. Of course it hurt when your silence was used against you. Of course it hurt when you changed because you had to heal, and they treated your healing like betrayal. That pain was real. God is not asking you to pretend it did not matter. God is not asking you to act like words did not cut you. God is not asking you to smile over wounds that still needed His hand. But He is asking you not to build your identity from the judgment of people who only saw pieces. Because they saw pieces, God saw the whole thing. They saw the day you stopped calling. God saw the 100 times you reached first and received nothing back. They saw the boundary. God saw the years you lived without one. They saw the quiet. God saw how many times your words were twisted when you tried to explain. They saw you walk away. God saw how long you stayed, hoping love would become safe. They saw your strength. God saw the nights it was held together by one thin thread of faith. And that is why you must stop giving final authority to partial witnesses. Not everyone who saw you had the ability to understand you. Not everyone who heard your voice had the purity to hear your heart. Not everyone who watched your process had the humility to admit that God was doing something they could not control. And not everyone who judged you was assigned to name you. That is a truth you must let settle deeply. Not everyone who judged you was assigned to name you. Some people can observe your life and still not have access to your calling. Some people can know your past and still not understand your becoming. Some people can stand close enough to see your pain and still be too wounded themselves to honor what God is forming in you. That does not mean you hate them. That does not mean you curse them. That does not mean you need to prove them wrong. It means you release them from the throne they were never meant to sit on. There is a throne inside your inner world where only God belongs. But pain has a way of letting people sit there. Rejection sits there and tells you what you are worth. Abandonment sits there and tells you what you deserve. Misunderstanding sits there and tells you that you must explain yourself until everyone finally sees the truth. Old shame sits there and tells you that one mistake is your whole identity. But chosen one, God is removing false judges from the throne of your soul. He is teaching you to stop living as though every opinion is a verdict. He is teaching you to stop treating every rumor like a sentence. He is teaching you to stop letting every misunderstanding become a prison. Because if God has already seen you, you do not need to keep bleeding for people who refuse to look deeper. This is not about becoming hard. This is about becoming anchored. This is not about saying people do not matter. This is about knowing they are not God. They can misunderstand you, but they cannot uncall you. They can reject you, but they cannot remove what heaven placed inside you. They can mislabel your season, but they cannot rewrite the record God kept. They can talk about the scene, but they cannot touch the covenant. And that is why heaven celebrated. Because there was a moment when you stopped asking broken rooms to announce your worth. Maybe it did not happen all at once. Maybe at first you still wanted them to see. You still wanted them to apologize. You still wanted them to admit that they hurt you. You still wanted them to say, "I understand now." You still wanted the person who made you feel small to finally recognize the weight you carried. That desire did not make you weak. It made you human. But somewhere along the way, God began to loosen your grip. Not because what happened did not matter, but because your healing could not remain dependent on their awareness. Your freedom could not wait for their maturity. Your peace could not be delayed until they became honest. Your identity could not be suspended until they finally spoke kindly about you. So God began to teach you a deeper kind of release. The kind of release that says, I do not need you to admit what God already knows. The kind of release that says, I do not need to rehearse the pain to prove it was real. The kind of release that says, I can forgive without reopening the door. The kind of release that says, I can walk away without becoming bitter. The kind of release that says, I can be misunderstood and still be obedient. That is not natural strength. That is grace. That is formation. That is the sign that something inside you has changed. And if you want to understand this through the life of someone God formed in secret, look at Joseph. Joseph was not simply a man who went from the pit to the palace. Many people talk about the palace because the palace is visible. The palace is impressive. The palace is the part people like to celebrate. But heaven saw Joseph before the palace. Heaven saw him in the pit. Heaven saw him when betrayal came from people who should have protected him. Heaven saw him when his gift brought him pain before it brought him promotion. Heaven saw him when he was falsely accused. Heaven saw him when he was forgotten by the person he helped. Heaven saw him when the timeline looked delayed, but the preparation was still active. And the deeper victory was not only that Joseph became powerful. The deeper victory was that Joseph did not let the pit poison him. The deeper victory was that he could stand in a place of authority without becoming a slave to revenge. The deeper victory was that he could see the people who wounded him and still recognize that God had been writing a larger story. That does not excuse the betrayal. That does not make the pit good. That does not make the pain holy by itself. But it shows what God can do with a heart that refuses to let pain become its final identity. Chosen one, that is why your story is deeper than what happened to you. Yes, you were hurt. Yes, you were delayed. Yes, you were misunderstood. Yes, you were overlooked. Yes, you were placed in situations that felt unfair. But what heaven is celebrating is that you did not let those things have the final word. You did not let betrayal turn you into someone who betrays. You did not let rejection turn you into someone who rejects every safe love that comes near. You did not let false accusation turn you into someone obsessed with controlling every opinion. You did not let being forgotten turn you into someone who forgets God. You did not let the pit become your personality. That is rare. That is holy. That is what God smiled over. Because many people come out of pain still carrying the shape of the thing that hurt them. They survive the wound, but they become the wound. They survive the betrayal, but they become suspicious of every heart. They survive the rejection, but they become addicted to proving they are wanted. They survive the silence, but they become afraid of stillness. They survive the delay, but they become bitter toward everyone who seems to move faster. But you are learning another way. Not a perfect way, not an easy way, but a holy way. You are learning how to carry memory without letting memory become master. You are learning how to honor pain without worshiping pain. You are learning how to remember what happened without letting what happened name you. And this is why God has been separating you from the need to be announced by people who did not understand your process. Because the next season requires a person whose identity is not for sale. If praise can build you too quickly, criticism can break you too easily. If applause becomes your oxygen, rejection becomes your death sentence. If people's approval becomes your mirror, then people's confusion will distort your face. So God hid you long enough for you to learn another mirror. His voice, His presence, His record, His hand on your life, His witness over the things nobody else saw. And when His voice becomes the mirror, you can stand in rooms that misunderstand you without losing yourself. You can walk through silence without assuming abandonment. You can receive correction without collapsing into shame. You can receive honor without becoming addicted to it. You can be unseen by people and still remain steady. You can be celebrated by people and still remain humble. That is why the hidden season was not wasted. God was not just preparing a blessing. He was preparing a person who would not be destroyed by blessing. He was preparing someone who could be trusted with visibility. He was preparing someone who could carry influence without becoming intoxicated by it. He was preparing someone who could love without begging. He was preparing someone who could lead without needing worship. He was preparing someone who could stand without the crowd. And that person is beginning to rise in you. That is why old rooms feel different now. That is why old conversations feel smaller. That is why certain places that once felt normal now feel heavy. That is why your spirit can no longer shrink itself just to remain accepted. That is why you cannot go back to the old version of peace that was really just self-abandonment. You are not being difficult. You are being delivered from the false peace of pleasing everyone. There is a peace that is not peace at all. It is just silence with fear underneath it. It is just agreement with resentment underneath it. It is just smiling while your spirit is being drained. It is just staying because you are afraid of being called selfish. It is just saying yes because no might make someone withdraw from you. God is not calling you back to that. He is calling you into true peace. Peace that can tell the truth. Peace that can hold a boundary. Peace that can walk away without hatred. Peace that can stay quiet without fear. Peace that can be misunderstood without falling apart. And that kind of peace is one of the clearest signs that you are no longer living under the old verdict. You are allowed to outgrow the version of yourself that needed everyone to understand. You are allowed to outgrow places that only knew how to use your wounds. You are allowed to outgrow conversations that require you to betray your peace. You are allowed to outgrow the habit of explaining your heart to people committed to misreading it. You are allowed to outgrow the guilt that rises when you protect what God is healing. You are allowed to outgrow the fear that says love will leave if you become honest. You are allowed to become the person God kept calling forth, while the old rooms kept calling you backward. And you do not owe anyone an apology for becoming who you were always intended to be. Let that truth enter slowly. You do not owe anyone an apology for becoming who you were always intended to be. You may owe people kindness. You may owe people honesty. You may owe people humility. You may owe people forgiveness in your heart. But you do not owe them the old version of you just because that version made them comfortable. You do not owe them access to your spirit because they were used to your availability. You do not owe them your exhaustion as proof of love. You do not owe them your silence if silence means self-betrayal. You do not owe them your yes when God is teaching you the holiness of no. This is not rebellion. This is stewardship. You are learning to steward the person God saved from the fire. And when you begin to steward yourself differently, not everyone will celebrate it. Some people benefit from your lack of boundaries. Some people call you loving when you are actually abandoning yourself. Some people call you humble when you are actually hiding. Some people call you loyal when you are actually afraid to leave what is draining you. Some people call you changed when what they really mean is, you are no longer easy to control. But heaven knows the difference. God knows the difference. He knows when a boundary is wisdom, not bitterness. He knows when silence is obedience, not weakness. He knows when distance is healing, not pride. He knows when your no is protection, not punishment. He knows when your new strength is not arrogance, but recovery. And because God knows, you can breathe again. You do not have to keep defending every movement of your healing. You do not have to keep translating your growth to people who only understand the version of you that needed them. You do not have to keep proving that you are still good just because you are no longer available for what harmed you. You can let God be the witness. You can let God be the judge. You can let God be the one who holds the record. And this does not mean your heart will never ache. It may still ache. There may still be moments where you wish they understood. There may still be moments where you wish they knew how much it cost you not to become bitter. There may still be moments where you wish someone would say, "I see what you carried." But chosen one, do not let the absence of human apology cancel the presence of divine approval. Do not let their silence make you question God's witness. Do not let their blindness make you doubt your own healing. Do not let their version of the story become louder than the peace God is placing in your bones. Because peace is also a testimony. You may not have the apology. You may not have the public vindication. You may not have the dramatic reversal yet. But if you have peace where panic used to live, God has already begun vindicating you from the inside. If you have restraint where reaction used to rule, God has already begun strengthening you. If you have discernment where confusion used to lead, God has already begun guiding you. If you have quiet confidence where approval hunger used to ache, God has already begun freeing you. And freedom is not small. Freedom is one of the first sounds of victory. This is why Joseph could stand before the people who betrayed him and not be consumed by the need to destroy them. He had already been freed before the public moment arrived. The palace did not make him free. God had been making him free in the hidden years. The position did not create his character. The prison revealed and refined it. The recognition did not give him identity. The secret place had already taught him who he was under God. And that is the same work happening in you. Do not wait until the public outcome arrives to believe that the private work was real. Do not wait until someone sees your value to believe God has been shaping it. Do not wait until the door opens to believe the roots have grown. The work is already real. The roots are already real. The shift is already real. The victory is already real. You know how you can tell? Because you cannot go back the same. Even when the old door opens, something in you hesitates now. Even when the old temptation calls, something in you discerns now. Even when the old wound speaks, something in you questions it now. Even when the old fear rises, something in you remembers God now. That is the evidence. You are no longer fully under the spell of what used to control you. And when God breaks the spell of an old identity, heaven celebrates. Now, there is another picture you need to hold in your spirit. Think of David. Before David ever sat on a throne, he was anointed in a place that did not look like royalty. He was still connected to fields, sheep, ordinary work, hidden responsibilities. He was chosen before he was recognized. He was marked before he was announced. He had oil before he had a crown. And there was a gap between the anointing and the throne. That gap was not proof that God forgot. That gap was preparation. That gap was protection. That gap was where David learned things a throne could not teach him. He learned courage where nobody applauded. He learned worship where nobody built a stage. He learned faithfulness while doing work other people overlooked. He learned how to face lions and bears before facing public giants. And chosen one, this is why you must not despise hidden years. Hidden does not mean rejected. Hidden does not mean forgotten. Hidden does not mean unchosen. Sometimes hidden means covered. Sometimes hidden means protected. Sometimes hidden means God is forming something in you that the wrong environment would have destroyed too early. You may have wanted the crown before the roots were ready. You may have wanted the platform before the private strength was formed. You may have wanted the relationship before your identity was healed enough not to beg inside it. You may have wanted the open door before your discernment was strong enough to know which doors were traps. So God let the gap do its work. And the gap was painful. Yes. The gap was confusing. Yes. The gap made you wonder if you heard God correctly. Yes. But the gap also saved you from entering too early, with a heart still chained to old approval. Because if you had been seen too early, you might have needed the attention too much. If you had been promoted too early, you might have carried the pressure with insecurity instead of peace. If you had been loved too early, you might have confused possession with covenant. If you had been blessed too early, you might have used the blessing to prove your worth instead of serve your purpose. So God waited, not because he was cruel, because he was kind in ways you did not understand yet. He was not withholding because he forgot you. He was withholding what would have overwhelmed the version of you that was still being healed. And now, something is different. You are not perfect, but you are more anchored. You are not fearless, but you are more honest. You are not beyond pain, but you are not ruled by it in the same way. You are not beyond desire, but you are no longer willing to sell your peace for temporary belonging. That is growth. That is readiness beginning to appear. That is why God smiled. He saw the person who could be trusted with more because they stopped needing more to feel chosen. Please hear that again. God saw the person who could be trusted with more because they stopped needing more to feel chosen. You are not chosen because the door opens. You are not chosen because they apologize. You are not chosen because the relationship arrives. You are not chosen because the money changes. You are not chosen because the room finally sees you. You are chosen because God placed his hand on your life before people had language for what he was doing. The open door may confirm it. The blessing may reveal it. The relationship may honor it. The provision may support it. But those things do not create it. God did. And what God created, human confusion cannot cancel. That is why your next freedom is freedom from begging old rooms to clap. Some rooms will never clap because your healing confronts their comfort. Some rooms will never clap because your growth exposes what they refuse to face. Some rooms will never clap because they preferred you when you were smaller. Some rooms will never clap because they only knew how to love the version of you that had no boundaries. Some rooms will never clap because they cannot celebrate a freedom they do not understand. Let them be rooms. Do not turn them into gods. Do not stand outside those doors forever, waiting for a sound God never told you to need. Do not keep presenting evidence to people who have already decided what they want to believe. Do not keep shrinking your testimony into a language small enough for their insecurity to accept. Walk with God. Let heaven's record become louder. Let the Father's smile become enough. Let divine approval become the ground under your feet. And when the ache rises, because it may rise, bring it back to the truth. They saw pieces. God saw the whole thing. They saw the scene. God saw the heart. They saw what changed. God saw why it had to change. They saw the boundary. God saw the bleeding that came before it. They saw you walk away. God saw how long you tried to stay. They saw your quietness. God saw your obedience. They saw less than they thought. God saw more than you could explain. This is where your soul begins to rest. Not because everyone understands, but because God does. Not because everyone agrees, but because God knows. Not because every accusation disappears, but because your identity is no longer built from accusation. And there is a deep kind of rest that comes when you stop trying to win a case God has already settled. You do not have to live on trial. You do not have to wake up every day presenting evidence that you are worthy of love. You do not have to keep proving that you are not the false version of yourself someone else created. You do not have to keep explaining why you needed to heal. You do not have to keep apologizing for the strength that grew from survival. You do not have to keep making yourself small so other people do not feel convicted by your growth. You can simply become, quietly, faithfully, honestly, with God, and the people assigned to your future will not need you to bleed to believe you. The people assigned to your future will recognize the peace God is forming in you. They may not know every detail of your pain, but they will honor the person who came out of it. They will not require you to abandon yourself to prove loyalty. They will not punish your boundaries. They will not need the old version of you in order to feel safe. They will meet you in truth. And until they come, God is still enough. Until the right doors open, God is still enough. Until the visible proof appears, God is still enough. Until the apology comes or never comes, God is still enough. Until the crowd sees or never sees, God is still enough. That is not a small sentence. That is spiritual freedom. Because when God becomes enough, People lose the power to starve your identity. They can disappoint you, but they cannot define you. They can leave, but they cannot empty you. They can misunderstand, but they cannot rename you. They can withhold applause, but they cannot remove the oil. David had oil before he had a crown. Joseph had a dream before he had a palace. You had a calling before you had confirmation. And chosen one, the absence of public recognition does not mean the absence of divine selection. This is why you must let God finish healing the part of you that still wants the wrong people to see. Not because you are wrong for wanting to be seen. You were made for connection. You were made for love. You were made to be witnessed in healthy ways. But there is a difference between being witnessed and being dependent. There is a difference between being honored and being controlled by honor. There is a difference between wanting understanding and needing it so badly that you abandon your peace to get it. God is teaching you the difference. He is not making you cold. He is making you free. He is not making you unreachable. He is making you whole. He is not removing your need for love. He is healing your addiction to unsafe love. And that healing is one of the reasons heaven celebrated. Because when a chosen one stops begging for validation from the same places that wounded them, a chain breaks. When a chosen one stops asking broken rooms to announce their worth, a chain breaks. When a chosen one stops confusing being needed with being loved, a chain breaks. When a chosen one stops letting guilt decide their boundaries, a chain breaks. When a chosen one stops calling self-abandonment humility, a chain breaks. And you have been breaking chains in silence. You may not have called it that. You may have just called it surviving the week. You may have just called it trying to stay calm. You may have just called it not texting back. You may have just called it keeping your peace. You may have just called it needing space. But in the spirit, chains were breaking. In the spirit, old cycles were losing legal ground. In the spirit, the person God called you to become was rising. And heaven celebrated because those quiet choices mattered more than you knew. So do not minimize the work because it was hidden. Do not minimize the victory because it was quiet. Do not minimize the growth because you are still tired. Do not minimize the healing because you still have tender places. Do not minimize the breakthrough because the outside has not caught up yet. The outside often catches up last. First, God shifts the heart. Then He renews the mind. Then He strengthens the spirit. Then He changes the appetite. Then He removes the false dependencies. Then He teaches the soul how to stand. And then, when the person is ready, the season begins to show what heaven already knew. That is where you are. You are standing in the space between being privately approved and publicly revealed. You are standing in the gap between oil and crown. You are standing between the pit that formed you and the palace that will require what the pit taught you. You are standing between the old courtroom of people and the divine record of God. And the question is no longer, did you win? The question is, can you stop living like you still need them to say it? Can you let God's witness be enough? Can you let the Father's smile become louder than their silence? Can you let the peace in your spirit matter more than the confusion in their mouth? Can you walk away from the need to be understood by people who were never willing to see the whole truth? Can you carry your healing without asking the old room for permission? This is where the next level of victory begins. Because the first victory was that the old cycle lost authority over you. The next victory is that the old courtroom loses authority over you. You are not on trial anymore. You are not waiting for a human verdict anymore. You are not begging for a broken room to call you worthy anymore. God has seen. God has known. God has recorded. God has smiled. And if God smiled, you can stop bowing to the frown of people who do not carry your assignment. Receive that slowly. If God smiled, you can stop bowing to the frown of people who do not carry your assignment. There will still be days when the old ache tries to return. There will still be memories that try to pull you back into explaining. There will still be moments where you wonder if maybe you should have said more, done more, proved more, stayed longer, fought harder, waited differently. But when that happens, bring your spirit back to the record. God saw the whole thing. God saw the heart. God saw the hidden obedience. God saw the private tears. God saw the quiet restraint. God saw the strength it took to heal without applause. And because he saw, you can rest. Because he saw, you can keep walking. Because he saw, you can leave the courtroom. Because he saw, you can stop asking people with partial evidence to make final declarations over your life. Chosen one, you are not guilty for growing. You are not guilty for healing. You are not guilty for needing peace. You are not guilty for becoming less available to confusion. You are not guilty for refusing to live under an old name. You are not guilty for walking with God into a version of yourself that some people do not recognize. You are becoming, and heaven recognizes becoming before earth knows what to call it. That is why God smiled before people clapped. That is why heaven celebrated before your circumstances fully changed. That is why your spirit feels the shift, even when your eyes still see unfinished details. You are being released from the wrong courtroom. And when you are released from the wrong courtroom, you become ready for the right assignment. But there is something you need to know before you walk further. Winning can feel uncomfortable. Freedom can feel unfamiliar. Being seen by God can expose the parts of you that were still hiding behind human approval. And after victory, there is a danger most people do not talk about. Because sometimes the hardest part is not surviving the wilderness. Sometimes the hardest part is learning how to live after you have crossed it. Sometimes the hardest part is not waiting for the crown. Sometimes the hardest part is becoming the kind of person who can wear it without letting it change the heart God just healed. So listen closely as this continues, because what comes next will explain why you can win and still feel afraid. Why you can be free and still feel tender. Why you can be chosen and still feel unsure. Why the very thing you prayed for can feel heavy when it starts coming near. And why that fear may not mean you are unready. It may mean you finally understand the weight, because weight is not the same as punishment. Sometimes weight is the first sign that you are finally close enough to what you prayed for, that your whole inner world begins to realize this is real. And that is why winning can feel strange. Chosen one. Nobody talks enough about the trembling that can come after victory. People tell you to have faith while you are waiting. They tell you to keep going while you are in the wilderness. They tell you not to quit when the door has not opened yet. But very few people teach you what happens when you finally cross a line in the spirit. And the old version of you does not know how to live in freedom. You can win and still feel afraid. You can be free and still feel tender. You can be chosen and still feel unsure. You can hear God saying, "It is time," and still feel a quiet trembling in your soul. And that trembling does not always mean you are unready. Sometimes it means you understand the weight. Sometimes it means you are no longer careless with what God is placing in your hands. Sometimes it means your spirit knows that the next season is not a toy, not a fantasy, not a performance, not something to use for validation. It is responsibility. It is stewardship. It is a holy kind of increase. And holy increase often makes the healed heart more humble, not more arrogant. So if you have been wondering why part of you feels peaceful, but another part of you feels nervous, listen carefully. This is not because God changed his mind about you. This is not because you failed the moment before the blessing. This is not because you are secretly unworthy. This may be because the part of you that survived the old season is still learning how to trust the new one. You were trained by pressure. You were trained by delay. You were trained by disappointment. You were trained by people leaving. You were trained by doors closing. You were trained by praying and still having to wait. So when something good comes close, your soul may not immediately celebrate. It may scan for danger. It may ask, what if this disappears too? It may ask, what if I ruin it? It may ask, what if I am not ready? It may ask, what if being seen exposes me? It may ask, what if I finally receive what I prayed for, and then lose myself trying to keep it? That fear can feel heavy. But chosen one, do not shame yourself for feeling it. There is a difference between fear that cages you and fear that makes you careful. There is a difference between fear that comes from unbelief and fear that comes from understanding the sacredness of what you are about to carry. There is a difference between panic that pulls you backward and reverence that makes you walk wisely. And God knows the difference. He is not standing over you saying, "Why are you afraid?" He is standing with you saying, "Let me teach you how to carry this." Because the next season is not asking you to become loud. It is asking you to become steady. It is not asking you to pretend you have no fear. It is asking you not to let fear become your driver. It is not asking you to rush into visibility. It is asking you to walk with God at the pace of obedience. And that is why this part of the journey matters so much. Because there are people who survive the wilderness but then sabotage the door. There are people who pray for increase, but when increase comes near, they run back to the familiar pain because pain feels predictable. There are people who ask God for healthy love, but when healthy love arrives, they do not know what to do without chaos. There are people who ask God for purpose, but when purpose begins requiring responsibility, they shrink. There are people who ask God for provision, but when provision starts moving, they panic because they have built their identity around lack. And God does not want you to sabotage what He has been preparing. He does not want you to run from the blessing because your nervous system only knows the battlefield. He does not want you to reject peace because chaos feels more familiar. He does not want you to call yourself humble when you are actually hiding. He does not want you to call yourself patient when you are actually afraid to move. He does not want you to call yourself careful when you are actually delaying obedience. This is where discernment becomes important. Because after victory, not every fear is a warning. Some fears are just old chains making noise. Not every hesitation is wisdom. Some hesitation is the old wound asking to stay in control. Not every closed feeling is God saying no. Sometimes it is the survival mind saying, "I do not know how to receive this." And this is where you must learn to recognize what has changed in you. Not by forcing yourself, not by pretending, not by making big dramatic moves, but by looking honestly at what no longer rules you. Here is what I want you to do inside your spirit. You do not need to move. You do not need to write anything down. Just let your heart stand before God in stillness, and let these questions pass through you like light through a window. What no longer controls me the way it used to? What no longer defines me the way it used to? What reaction no longer owns my mouth? What fear no longer gets to make every decision? What old door can I now leave closed, even if loneliness knocks? What peace has God given me that I keep trying to explain away? Do not rush the answers. Let them rise quietly, because the answers to those questions are evidence. Evidence that you are not the same. Evidence that the old cycle lost authority. Evidence that heaven was not celebrating an imaginary victory. Evidence that God has been doing a deeper work than your eyes could measure. And when your mind tries to say, "But I am still afraid," answer gently, "Yes, I may still feel fear, but fear is no longer my throne. Yes, I may still feel tender, but tenderness is not defeat. Yes, I may still have questions, but questions do not cancel calling. Yes, I may still be learning, but learning does not mean I am disqualified. Yes, I may still be healing, but healing does not mean I am behind." Chosen one, the next season does not require you to be fearless. It requires you to be surrendered. It requires you to be honest. It requires you to be willing to walk forward with God, even while your old survival patterns try to negotiate. Because they will try. The old identity will not leave without knocking one more time. Old fear will knock and say, "Are you sure you are ready?" Old shame will knock and say, "Remember who you used to be?" Old rejection will knock and say, "Do not get too hopeful." Old anger will knock and say, "Make them pay before you move on." Old loneliness will knock and say, "Go back to what hurt you." At least it was familiar. Old approval hunger will knock and say, do not move until they understand you. Old confusion will knock and say, maybe God is not really in this. But you do not have to open every door that knocks. That is one of the clearest signs of maturity. The old version of you answered every knock. If fear knocked, you opened. If guilt knocked, you opened. If loneliness knocked, you opened. If someone from the past knocked, you opened. If an old pattern knocked with a familiar voice, you opened. But this version of you is learning to pause in the spirit. This version of you is learning to ask, does this belong in the house God is building in me? Does this voice honor the healing God is forming in me? Does this opportunity require me to abandon peace? Does this relationship require me to shrink back into survival? Does this decision come from trust, or does it come from panic? Does this door align with calling, or is it only familiar? Would the healed version of me say yes to this? Those questions are not small. They are gates. And in your next season, you must become a faithful gatekeeper over your own spirit. Not everything gets access. Not every voice gets a seat. Not every memory gets authority. Not every feeling gets direction. Not every opportunity gets your yes. Not every familiar person gets the old access. Not every open door is assignment. Not every familiar voice is safety. Not every urgent feeling is God. Some things are only returning to see if you still answer to the name you outgrew. Some people are only coming back to see if the boundary is real. Some temptations are only testing whether peace has become valuable to you. Some fears are only asking if you will still let them drive. And chosen one this time, you do not have to answer the way you used to answer. You do not have to run. You do not have to chase. You do not have to explain. You do not have to prove. You do not have to reopen. You do not have to shrink. You do not have to betray the peace God gave you just because something familiar is asking for access. This is where the new you must stand, quietly, firmly, without hatred, without panic, without needing to make a speech. There is a holy strength that does not announce itself. It simply does not move backward. And that is the kind of strength God has been forming in you. The old identity may try to return because the old identity knows your language. It knows your weak places. It knows how to sound like comfort. It knows how to use guilt. It knows how to use nostalgia. It knows how to make the old pain look like home. It knows how to make chaos feel exciting. It knows how to make peace feel boring. It knows how to make healthy love feel unfamiliar. It knows how to make purpose feel too heavy. It knows how to make visibility feel dangerous. But now you know something you did not know before. Familiar does not always mean safe. Intense does not always mean true. Urgent does not always mean divine. Comfortable does not always mean aligned. And lonely does not always mean you should go back. Sometimes loneliness is the hallway between the old room and the new one. Sometimes emptiness is what it feels like when God removes what used to drain you. Sometimes quiet is not abandonment. Sometimes quiet is your spirit finally not being crowded by chaos. So do not run back just because the hallway feels unfamiliar. Do not resurrect what God helped you bury just because the new has not fully appeared yet. Do not call an old chain a connection just because it knows your name. Do not call an old wound love just because it once felt close. And do not call the new season unsafe just because it requires a version of you that is still learning how to stand. This is why winning feels strange. Because winning is not only receiving something new. Winning is letting the old lose its claim. And sometimes the old does not lose its claim without making noise. It will remind you of who you were. It will remind you of what happened. It will remind you of what you lost. It will remind you of who left. It will remind you of the nights you cried. It will remind you of the doors that closed. It will remind you of the times you hoped and were disappointed. And then it will ask, are you really going to trust again? Are you really going to believe again? Are you really going to walk forward again? Are you really going to let God write something new? And your answer does not need to be loud. Your answer can be quiet. Yes. Even if my hands tremble, yes. Even if my heart is still learning, yes. Even if I do not know every detail, yes. Even if the old story tries to call me back, yes. Even if I have to walk slowly, yes. Because a slow yes is still obedience when it is real. A trembling yes is still faith when it is surrendered. A quiet yes is still powerful when it comes from a heart that refuses to return to bondage. You do not need to perform confidence. You need to practice trust. And trust, for you, may look like not answering the old door. Trust may look like letting a new, healthy thing feel unfamiliar without rejecting it. Trust may look like allowing peace to be enough evidence for today. Trust may look like taking the next right step in your spirit, even before your emotions fully agree. Trust may look like letting God introduce you to a version of yourself that survival never allowed you to meet. Because there is a version of you that has not lived yet. There is a version of you that is not always bracing. There is a version of you that does not need to earn love through exhaustion. There is a version of you that can receive without suspicion. There is a version of you that can lead without fear of being attacked. There is a version of you that can rest without guilt. There is a version of you that can be visible without becoming prideful. There is a version of you that can be blessed without losing hunger for God. That version is not fake. That version is not too much. That version is not impossible. That version is the person God was protecting beneath the pressure. And this is why the old season could not keep you. It trained you, but it could not own you. It shaped you, but it could not name you. It tested you, but it could not stop you. It delayed you, but it could not delete you. It hurt you, but it could not have the final word. Now the question becomes, can you let the new version breathe? Can you stop apologizing for the peace that now protects you? Can you stop translating your healing into language your old life accepts? Can you stop calling yourself behind because you are not moving at someone else's pace? Can you stop requiring yourself to feel fearless before you obey? Can you stop waiting for the old identity to feel comfortable with the new assignment? Because it will not. The old identity will always prefer the old cage. The old identity will always prefer what it can predict. The old identity will always prefer a pain it understands over a promise it cannot control. But you are not called to be loyal to the cage that once kept you alive. You can honor what helped you survive without letting it lead your future. You can say thank you for carrying me through that season, but you are not my name anymore. You can say thank you, old defense mechanisms, but I do not need you to run my life anymore. You can say thank you, old fear, for trying to protect me, but God is my protector now. You can say, thank you, old version of me, for making it this far, but we are crossing over now. This is not rejection of yourself. This is integration. This is becoming whole. This is letting God take every version of you. The wounded one, the tired one, the afraid one, the faithful one, the hidden one, the one who almost quit, the one who kept going, and gather them into a healed identity. Nothing wasted, nothing denied, nothing worshipped, everything surrendered. And that is a holy work. That is why this season may feel both beautiful and uncomfortable. Because you are not just leaving a circumstance, you are leaving a self-image. You are leaving the version of you that always expected disappointment. You are leaving the version of you that felt safer being overlooked. You are leaving the version of you that believed love had to be earned through pain. You are leaving the version of you that thought God's silence meant God's absence. You are leaving the version of you that needed every person to understand before you could keep walking. And when a self-image dies, even a painful one, the soul may grieve. So if there is grief in this victory, do not be confused. You may be grieving the old you. You may be grieving the years spent in survival. You may be grieving the relationships that cannot come with you. You may be grieving the fact that you had to become strong in ways you never asked for. You may be grieving the innocence that was touched by disappointment. You may be grieving the version of your life you thought would happen by now. And God is not ashamed of that grief. He can bless you and still hold your grief. He can move you forward and still comfort what hurts. He can say, "It is time," while still being gentle with the part of you that is trembling. That is the heart of the Father. He does not drag his children into purpose. He leads. He does not mock their fear. He teaches them how to walk through it. He does not demand that they feel ready in every emotion. He asks for trust. And sometimes trust means letting him show you that the future is not your past, wearing a new face. This new door is not the old trap. This new connection is not the old wound. This new responsibility is not the old burden. This new visibility is not the old exposure. This new provision is not the old pressure to prove. This new season is not coming to destroy you. It is coming to reveal what God has been forming. But you must not enter it carrying the assumption that everything good will hurt you. That assumption was born from pain. It may have protected you for a while, but it cannot lead you into promise. You cannot fully receive while constantly preparing for betrayal. You cannot fully obey while constantly waiting for punishment. You cannot fully love while constantly searching for the exit. You cannot fully build while constantly expecting collapse. You cannot fully walk in calling while constantly apologizing for existing. So God is touching the expectation underneath the fear. He is not only changing what happens around you, He is changing what you expect from Him. He is changing what you expect from yourself. He is changing what you expect from love. He is changing what you expect from peace. He is changing what you expect from open doors. Because when someone has lived through enough disappointment, they can begin to expect pain even when God is sending provision. They can begin to mistrust calm because chaos taught them to stay alert. They can begin to reject help because help was once used as control. They can begin to hide their gifts because visibility was once unsafe. They can begin to shrink their prayers because hope once hurt too much. But God is restoring your capacity to hope without losing wisdom. That is important. He is not making you naive. He is making you healed. He is not asking you to ignore discernment. He is asking you not to confuse discernment with fear. He is not asking you to trust everyone. He is asking you to trust Him enough to recognize who is safe, what is aligned, and when it is time to move. There is a huge difference. And this is where the life of Esther speaks so deeply to your season. Esther was hidden before she was revealed. She was positioned before she fully understood the weight of her position. She did not rise only for comfort. She rose for assignment. Her elevation was not just about beauty, favor, or being noticed. It was about timing. It was about courage. It was about a moment where her hidden preparation had to become visible obedience. And chosen one, that is what many people miss. God does not reveal you just so people can admire you. He reveals you when your visibility can serve purpose. He reveals you when your presence can carry responsibility. He reveals you when your voice can help shift something beyond your own comfort. And that is why the waiting was not wasted. The hidden years taught you what applause could not teach you. The private tears taught you compassion. The betrayal taught you discernment. The delay taught you patience. The loneliness taught you how to stand with God. The closed doors taught you not to worship access. The silence taught you how to hear the still small voice beneath the noise. So when visibility comes, it will not be empty. It will carry weight. When favor comes, it will not be shallow. It will carry purpose. When doors open, they will not just be opportunities. They will be assignments. When people recognize you, you will not need their recognition to become real. You will already know who you are. That is why Esther had to be prepared before she was positioned. Because position without preparation can break a person. Favor without identity can distort a person. Visibility without humility can intoxicate a person. Provision without purpose can distract a person. Love without healing can become dependency. And God loves you too much to give you something that your unhealed places would turn into a prison. So He formed you, He slowed you, He covered you, He refined you, He taught you to survive without applause, so you would not become addicted to applause when it arrived. He taught you to pray in secret, so you would not perform spirituality in public. He taught you to walk without everyone's approval, so you would not lose your assignment when approval changed. He taught you to find peace in Him, so peace would not depend on the mood of people around you. And now, as the next season comes near, the fear you feel is not necessarily a sign to run. It may be a sign to consecrate the moment. It may be a sign to say, God, keep my heart clean as you increase my life. It may be a sign to say, Father, do not let me lose the humility you formed in the hidden place. It may be a sign to say, teach me how to carry what I once prayed for. It may be a sign to say, make me faithful, not just successful. Make me whole, not just visible. Make me wise, not just wanted. Make me useful, not just admired. Make me steady, not just excited. Because the goal is not just to win. The goal is to remain close to God after you win. The goal is not just to be seen. The goal is to be seen without losing the secret place. The goal is not just to receive. The goal is to receive without forgetting the one who kept you when you had nothing. The goal is not just to rise. The goal is to rise without stepping on the tenderness God protected inside you. That is why this moment is sacred. You are not standing where you used to stand. You are not the same person who entered the wilderness. You are not the same person who thought every closed door meant rejection. You are not the same person who thought every delay meant failure. You are not the same person who thought every misunderstanding required an explanation. You are not the same person who thought love meant self-erasure. You are not the same person who thought peace had to be earned by pleasing everyone. You are different. And the reason the new feels strange is because you are different. The new is not asking the old you to enter. The new is calling the formed you forward. The new is calling the healed you forward. The new is calling the wiser you forward. The new is calling the anchored you forward. The new is calling the God-held you forward. And the old identity is nervous because it cannot control where God is taking you. But that is not a reason to turn back. That is a reason to trust deeper. So let your spirit hear this. You can be afraid and still be ready. You can be tender and still be chosen. You can be quiet and still be powerful. You can be healing and still be called. You can be uncertain and still be led. You can be unseen by people and still be positioned by God. You can be standing in the hallway and still be crossing into promise. Readiness does not always feel like confidence. Sometimes readiness feels like surrender. Sometimes readiness feels like no longer running from the thing God keeps bringing back to your heart. Sometimes readiness feels like finally being able to say, I do not feel completely ready, but I trust the one who prepared me. And that trust is enough for the next step. Not the whole staircase, not the whole map, not every answer, just the next step. God often leads chosen ones this way. Enough light for obedience, enough peace for today, enough grace for the next yes, enough strength for the next door, enough wisdom for the next decision. And as you take those steps, something will become clear. You are not being thrown into the future. You are being led. You are not being forced into visibility. You are being revealed. You are not being punished with responsibility. You are being trusted with assignment. You are not being asked to perform. You are being invited to become. And heaven celebrated because heaven saw that you were no longer the same person who would have mishandled this season years ago. Years ago, you may have chased what was not for you. Years ago, you may have confused attention with love. Years ago, you may have measured your worth by who stayed. Years ago, you may have opened every door that felt familiar. Years ago, you may have let guilt write your decisions. Years ago, you may have thought being chosen meant being constantly drained. But now, something in you knows better. Now, something in you pauses. Now, something in you discerns. Now, something in you waits for peace. Now, something in you listens for God beneath the noise. Now, something in you knows that not everything that wants access deserves access. Now, something in you understands that the blessing must not cost the peace God used the wilderness to teach you. That is maturity. That is the fruit of hidden training. That is the reason God smiled. And still, this is not the end of the message, because winning is not the final revelation. Victory is not only about escaping what hurt you. Victory is about becoming trustworthy with what God is about to place in your hands. And this is where the message becomes even deeper. Heaven was not celebrating your comfort. Heaven was not celebrating an easy life. Heaven was not celebrating the absence of pressure. Heaven was not celebrating because you would never face another challenge. Heaven was celebrating because something in you became unshakable. Something in you learned how to stand. Something in you stopped bowing to old fear. Something in you stopped worshipping human approval. Something in you stopped mistaking chaos for calling. Something in you stopped letting the wound write the future. And the thing heaven celebrated is the same thing darkness could not steal. It could touch your circumstances. It could touch your emotions. It could touch your relationships. It could touch your timeline. It could touch your confidence. But it could not steal the part of you God had marked for purpose. That is why the next truth matters so much. Because God is not only showing you that you survived, He is showing you that you became trustworthy. And once a chosen one becomes trustworthy with what once would have destroyed them, a new level of responsibility begins to open. This is where you must listen with your whole spirit. Because what heaven celebrated is not what most people think. Heaven was not celebrating because your life suddenly became easy. Heaven was not celebrating because every enemy disappeared. Heaven was not celebrating because every wound stopped feeling tender. Heaven was not celebrating because every door opened at once. Heaven was not celebrating because you would never cry again, never wait again, never face pressure again, never need faith again. Heaven was celebrating because something in you became unshakable. Something in you learned how to stand without the old crutches. Something in you stopped bowing to the voice that used to control you. Something in you became trustworthy with what once would have destroyed you. That is the revelation you need to receive slowly. God was not only watching whether you could survive pain, He was watching what pain would produce in you. Would it produce bitterness or wisdom? Would it produce hardness or discernment? Would it produce pride or holy confidence? Would it produce isolation or deeper intimacy with Him? Would it produce revenge or authority over the need for revenge? Would it produce fear or a more mature kind of faith? And chosen one, heaven celebrated because the fire did not steal what God placed inside you. It touched your circumstances, but it did not take your calling. It touched your emotions, but it did not take your capacity to love. It touched your relationships, but it did not take your ability to forgive. It touched your confidence, but it did not take the hand of God from your life. It touched your timeline, but it did not cancel your purpose. It touched your heart, but it did not turn your heart into stone. That is why God smiled. Not because you were never shaken, but because you did not surrender your soul to the shaking. Not because you never cried, but because your tears did not drown your faith. Not because you never questioned, but because your questions did not become rebellion against the one who was still holding you. Not because you never felt weak, but because weakness did not become your final name. You became trustworthy. That word may feel heavy, but it is beautiful. Trustworthy does not mean flawless. Trustworthy does not mean you never felt fear. Trustworthy does not mean you handled every moment perfectly. Trustworthy means that what came against you did not fully own you. Trustworthy means God could form something in you without your pain turning into poison. Trustworthy means you learned how to carry pressure without using it as an excuse to become someone you were never called to be. Trustworthy means you can now hold things that would have overwhelmed the old version of you. You can hold attention without worshipping it. You can hold love without begging inside it. You can hold silence without assuming abandonment. You can hold correction without collapsing into shame. You can hold blessing without using it to prove your worth. You can hold responsibility without calling it punishment. You can hold peace without feeling guilty for protecting it. That is not small. That is formation. That is maturity. That is heaven's evidence that the wilderness produced what it was sent to produce. You went in needing everyone to understand, and you are coming out anchored in what God knows. You went in reactive, and you are coming out discerning. You went in carrying wounds like names, and you are coming out carrying wisdom like oil. You went in afraid of being alone, and you are coming out able to stand with God. You went in measuring your worth by who stayed, and you are coming out knowing that what God placed in you cannot be voted away. You went in trying to be chosen by people, and you are coming out realizing God had already chosen you before they had an opinion. That is why heaven celebrated, because the old version did not have the final word, because the cycle did not win, because the wound did not become your identity, because rejection did not become your religion, because fear did not become your shepherd, because delay did not convince you that God was absent, because loneliness did not make you run back to what God was trying to deliver you from. And I need you to hear this in a deep place. It is as if the Father is saying, I did not just see what happened to you, I saw what remained in you. I saw the part of you that still chose me when choosing me was not easy. I saw the part of you that kept a clean heart in a dirty season. I saw the part of you that refused to become the weapon that wounded you. And because you did not lose yourself in the fire, I can trust you with more. Let that settle, because this is where many chosen ones misunderstand the season. They think more is only about more money, more attention, more opportunity, more love, more visibility, more open doors. And yes, God can bring provision. God can bring the right people. God can open doors no person can shut. God can restore what was lost. God can make a way where there seemed to be no way. But before more ever becomes visible around you, it must become stable within you. More peace, more discernment, more capacity, more humility, more wisdom, more inner authority, more willingness to obey even when the room does not clap, more ability to receive without becoming prideful, more ability to lose without losing yourself, more ability to wait without becoming bitter, more ability to move without becoming reckless. This is why God does deep work before visible elevation, because a blessing placed on an unhealed identity can become another prison. A platform placed under an approval addiction can become another cage. A relationship placed inside a desperate heart can become another altar. Provision placed inside an unanchored soul can become another god. So God worked on the vessel. He worked on the roots. He worked on the inner room. He worked on the part of you that nobody sees until pressure exposes it. He worked on how you respond when you are misunderstood. He worked on how you carry silence. He worked on how you handle no. He worked on how you receive yes. He worked on how you let go. He worked on how you stay tender without staying available to destruction. He worked on how you protect peace without becoming proud. He worked on how you hear him when everything else is loud. And now, the celebration in heaven is not empty emotion. It is recognition. The vessel is different. The roots are deeper. The heart is wiser. The old cycle is weaker. The calling is clearer. The person God was forming has begun to stand. That is why this message is not just saying, you won. It is saying, understand what winning has made possible. Because when God can trust you with more, your life begins to shift in ways that are not always dramatic at first. Sometimes it starts with what you can no longer tolerate. You can no longer tolerate conversations that require you to betray your peace. You can no longer tolerate environments where your spirit feels suffocated. You can no longer tolerate false urgency that pulls you out of prayer and into panic. You can no longer tolerate relationships where love is measured by how much of yourself you abandon. You can no longer tolerate your own excuses when God has already shown you the next step. That does not mean you become harsh. It means your spirit has learned the difference between peace and performance. And when that difference becomes clear, a new kind of responsibility begins. Because God does not only heal you so you can feel better. He heals you so you can live truer. He heals you so you can choose wiser. He heals you so you can carry purpose without bleeding on everything around you. He heals you so your pain becomes medicine, not poison. He heals you so your testimony becomes a bridge, not a weapon. He heals you so your presence becomes light, not performance. And, chosen one, this is one of the reasons your life has felt so deeply processed. You were not only being comforted, you were being commissioned. You were not only being restored, you were being made whole. There is a beautiful depth in the idea of restoration. Many people think restoration means God simply gives back what was taken. And sometimes he does. But in the language of Scripture, there is a deeper family of meaning connected to wholeness, peace, completion, and making something sound again. The Hebrew idea around shalom and shalom carries a sense of completeness, soundness, peace, and restoration that is more than getting an old thing back. It is not only replacement, it is wholeness. It is not only return, it is completion. It is not only, here is what you lost. It is, let me make you whole in the place where loss exposed the wound. That matters, because God is not just trying to return you to who you were before the pain. The old you was loved, yes. The old you was precious, yes. The old you mattered, yes. But the old you had not yet learned what this season taught you. The old you had tenderness, but not this discernment. The old you had desire, but not this patience. The old you had dreams, but not this depth. The old you had faith, but not this tested trust. So restoration does not always mean going backward to the version of yourself before it happened. Sometimes restoration means God gathers every broken piece, every lesson, every tear, every delay, every hidden act of obedience, and forms a person more whole than the person who entered the fire. That is what he has been doing. He is not just giving you back something. He is making you whole. He is not just repairing what was damaged. He is strengthening what will carry the next season. He is not just healing memory. He is renewing identity. He is not just closing wounds. He is turning scars into wisdom. And there is a difference between a closed wound and a healed witness. A closed wound says, I am no longer bleeding. A healed witness says, I can help someone else believe they will survive too. A closed wound says, that season is over. A healed witness says, God was faithful in the season I thought would end me. A closed wound says, I made it through. A healed witness says, I made it through, and I did not come out empty. That is where you are being taken. You are not being restored into emptiness. You are being restored into assignment. But before that assignment becomes louder, there is a practice your spirit must learn. You must learn peace before proof. Because if you can only rest when the evidence is visible, then your peace will always be controlled by delay. If you can only believe when the door is open, then your faith will tremble every time God asks you to wait. If you can only feel chosen when people recognize you, then your identity will rise and fall with human attention. So let this become an inner practice. No movement is needed. No outward action is required. Just let your spirit hold one sentence before God. I do not need visible proof to honor invisible progress. Let that sentence move through the places in you that still want evidence before they allow rest. I do not need visible proof to honor invisible progress. Now, in your mind, let one private victory rise. Not a huge one, not something you need to explain to anyone. Just one thing that no longer controls you the same way. Maybe it is a person, maybe it is a fear, maybe it is a memory, maybe it is a reaction, maybe it is the need to chase, maybe it is the need to prove. Maybe it is the need to call yourself behind. Let it rise, and then say inwardly, God, thank you for changing what people cannot see yet. That is peace before proof. That is honoring the hidden work. That is refusing to call God inactive just because the outside has not caught up. That is how a chosen one learns to live from divine approval instead of visible applause. And the more you practice this, the less your soul will panic in the waiting. Because waiting is not always emptiness. Sometimes waiting is the space where God lets your inner world align with what your outer world is about to require. This is important because there are chosen ones who have already won spiritually, but still feel mentally foggy. They have forgiven, but their thoughts still feel heavy. They have surrendered, but their focus still feels scattered. They have healed in deep places, but their mind still feels trained by years of survival. They know God has done something in them, but their brain still feels like it is moving through old fog. And if that is you, do not shame yourself. Spiritual victory is real, but your mind may still need recalibration. Your heart may have crossed over, while your nervous system is still learning that the war is not the same. Your spirit may know you are free, while your thought patterns are still used to expecting pressure. This is why healing has layers. God can touch the spirit, and then teach the mind how to agree. God can give peace, and then train the body not to brace. God can reveal identity, and then renew the patterns that once made you live beneath it. Think of a teacher who spent years helping other people grow, while quietly feeling stuck inside her own mind. On the outside, she was responsible. She showed up, she gave, she served, but inside, she felt like her mind was moving at a fraction of what it used to be. Ideas came slowly. Decisions felt heavy. Hope felt more like a memory than a present reality. And she began to wonder if the version of her that once felt bright, creative, and alive had simply disappeared. But what if it had not disappeared? What if it had been buried under stress, survival, disappointment, noise, and years of mental pressure? What if part of the restoration God brings is not only emotional peace, but a renewed capacity to think clearly, discern quickly, and live from the deeper intelligence He placed inside you? This is why the mind matters. Not because the mind replaces faith. It does not. Not because a tool replaces prayer. It never should. Not because science replaces God. It cannot. But because the God who made your spirit also made your brain. The God who formed your calling also formed the way your mind processes light, sound, focus, memory, emotion, and attention. And many chosen ones have spent years living in survival patterns, so long that their mind learned to operate from heaviness. They can pray, but still feel foggy. They can believe, but still feel scattered. They can feel called, but still struggle to focus long enough to build what God is asking them to build. And that is why I want to speak carefully about something that may serve as a tool for those who feel led. There is a simple 7-minute audio ritual called the Genius Song. It is designed around brain entrainment, using sound through headphones to help guide the brain toward gamma activity, the kind of brainwave often connected with heightened focus, insight, mental clarity, and flow. Now hear me clearly. This is not magic. This is not a replacement for prayer. This is not a replacement for obedience. This is not a replacement for wise decisions, healing work, rest, therapy if you need it, or the daily discipline of walking with God. It is a tool, and a tool is only powerful when it supports the deeper work God is already doing in you. But for some chosen ones, it may be exactly the kind of tool that helps the mind begin to agree with the victory the Spirit has already received. Because if you are watching this and something in you keeps saying, I know I was made for more, but my mind feels locked, your issue may not be lack of desire. It may not be lack of prayer. It may not be lack of worth. It may be that your brain has been trained by years of survival to live beneath the capacity God originally placed in you. The way I think about it is simple. Imagine your mind like a radio. For years, life kept turning the dial towards static. Stress turned it. Disappointment turned it. Fear turned it. Overthinking turned it. Pressure turned it. Survival turned it. And now, even when God is speaking peace, part of you may still be tuned to noise. The Genius Song is presented as a 7-minute way to help turn the dial. Not to create your calling. God already did that. Not to make you chosen. God already marked you. Not to replace the secret place. Nothing replaces that. But to support the mind in returning to a clearer, more focused state, so you can hear, build, decide, and move with less fog. The process is simple. You use headphones. You listen for 7 minutes a day. You do not need to force a meditation. You do not need to repeat a mantra. You do not need to wake up at 4 in the morning. You do not need to become someone else. You simply give your mind a few minutes of intentional sound while your spirit remains surrendered to God. Some advanced biofeedback methods can cost hundreds of dollars per session, and at-home devices can cost thousands. The Genius Song was created as a much simpler digital audio track. The original price is $49, but through the special page I am sharing, it is currently $39. And with it, there are several bonuses included, such as an audio track for children, a classic book connected to the principles of wealth and inner vision, a guided visualization, and a simple infographic for daily habits. There is also a money-back guarantee. So if you explore it and feel it is not for you, you are not trapped. That matters because anything connected to your healing should never be presented with pressure. I also need to say this clearly. There are fake versions and copycat pages that use similar names, but do not carry the same audio technology, bonuses, or guarantee. So if you feel led to explore it, use only the link in the description and the pinned comment. Do not search random places and assume you found the right one. And do not move from panic. Move from peace. If your spirit feels no pull toward it, let it pass. This message is still for you. But if something in you feels a quiet yes, if you have been asking God for a way to help your mind come out of fog and into focus, then you can look at the information through the link provided. Investigate it with discernment. Pray over it. Let peace lead. And then come back to the deeper truth. The tool is not the victory. The victory is who God has been forming in you. The sound is not your savior. God is. The audio is not your identity. Your identity is already held in the hands of the Father. A tool can support alignment, but it cannot replace surrender. And surrender is still the center of this whole message. Because the deepest recalibration is not only in the brain, it is in the soul. It is when the old fear no longer names you. It is when the old wound no longer leads you. It is when the old approval hunger no longer owns you. It is when your mind, your heart, and your spirit begin to agree with what God already declared. You are not defeated. You are not abandoned. You are not behind. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are not disqualified because you needed time to heal. You are not less chosen because the process was messy. You are not less loved because the wilderness was long. God smiled because the real you is still here. And not only still here, more grounded, more discerning, more humble, more awake, more able to carry what once would have crushed you. That is what heaven celebrated. Not comfort, capacity, not applause, formation, not appearance, trustworthiness, not perfection, faithfulness. And when faithfulness becomes visible in a person who has suffered, heaven takes notice, because that kind of person becomes dangerous to darkness in the most holy way. Not because they are loud, not because they are harsh, not because they walk around trying to prove how spiritual they are, but because they are no longer easy to move, they are no longer easy to bait, they are no longer easy to manipulate through guilt, they are no longer easy to break with silence, they are no longer easy to control with rejection, they are no longer easy to seduce with counterfeit attention. They have learned the sound of God beneath the noise. They have learned the cost of peace. They have learned the difference between a door and a distraction. They have learned the difference between love and emotional hunger. They have learned the difference between waiting and wasting. They have learned the difference between humility and hiding. And once a chosen one learns those differences, their life becomes a testimony even before the public results arrive. You may not realize how much your spirit has changed, but the old things realize it. The old fear realizes it cannot pull you as quickly. The old shame realizes it cannot speak as loudly. The old cycle realizes it cannot open the same doors. The old confusion realizes you are asking better questions now. The old guilt realizes your boundaries are no longer as easy to break. That is why some things may be testing you one more time. Not because you failed, but because the old cycle wants to know if it still has a key. And this is your answer. No, not with anger, not with panic, not with a performance. Just no, no, you cannot have my peace. No, you cannot rename me. No, you cannot make me live on trial again. No, you cannot make me return to a version of myself God has already delivered. No, you cannot make me confuse familiarity with safety. No, you cannot make me call fear wisdom. No, you cannot make me call self-abandonment love. No, you cannot make me bow to the old verdict. That no is holy. That no is mature. That no is part of the victory. Because every sacred yes requires a holy no. Yes to God often means no to the old cage. Yes to peace often means no to chaos disguised as connection. Yes to purpose often means no to distractions that know how to flatter your wounds. Yes to healing often means no to the version of you that survived by betraying yourself. And chosen one, you are allowed to say no to what God already brought you through. You are allowed to protect the altar of your peace. You are allowed to guard the oil that was formed in the hidden place. You are allowed to stop explaining yourself to doors that only open when you are bleeding. You are allowed to enter the next season without dragging every old voice with you. This is not cruelty. This is consecration. This is not arrogance. This is stewardship. This is not pride. This is obedience to the God who did not bring you through fire so you could keep sleeping in ashes. The ashes were evidence of what you survived, but they are not your home. The wilderness was a classroom, but it is not your permanent address. The pit was part of the story, but it is not your name. The delay shaped you, but it is not your destiny. The rejection refined you, but it is not your identity. The battle trained you, but it is not your throne. And this is where the message rises to a deeper place. Because maybe you thought heaven celebrated because your personal pain was ending. Maybe you thought heaven celebrated because you were finally going to receive relief. Maybe you thought heaven celebrated because you survived the thing that almost broke you. And yes, there is truth there. But there is something even deeper. Heaven celebrated because your victory was never only about you. It was connected to more than your emotions. It was connected to more than your personal comfort. It was connected to more than your private breakthrough. When a chosen one wins the right battle in the hidden place, something begins to shift beyond what they can see. A pattern loses power. A family line feels the interruption. A future relationship is protected from an old wound. A calling receives a cleaner vessel. A room you have not entered yet receives a person who has been prepared. People you have not met yet will one day be helped by what God healed in you. Words you have not spoken yet will carry weight because they were born from fire. Love you have not given yet will be healthier because God taught you not to confuse love with losing yourself. Doors you have not walked through yet will be safer because you have learned how to enter without worshipping the door. That is the part most people miss. Your healing is not only for your relief. Your freedom is not only for your comfort. Your restoration is not only for your happiness. Your victory is connected to assignment. And this is why the final revelation matters. Because God did not just bring you out so you could say, I survived. He brought you out so one day someone else could look at your life and say, maybe I can survive too. He brought you out so your presence could become proof. He brought you out so your peace could become a shelter. He brought you out so your discernment could protect what your old self would have given away. He brought you out so your voice could carry truth without bitterness. He brought you out so your hands could build what pain tried to convince you would never exist. That is why the next part is not only about celebration, it is about commissioning. It is about understanding what your victory is about to unlock. It is about learning how relationships, purpose, and provision begin to reorganize around a person who has finally stopped living under the old verdict. It is about seeing why your win was not isolated. It touched your bloodline. It touched your calling. It touched your future. It touched rooms you have not entered. It touched people who will one day need the healed version of you. And that is why heaven did not only celebrate that you made it through. Heaven celebrated because when you won, something opened. Something opened in the spirit before it opened in the visible. Something shifted in the hidden place before it showed itself in your daily life. Something broke loose in the realm of purpose before your circumstances knew how to reflect it. And chosen one, this is the part you must understand with your whole heart. Your victory was never only about you. It was personal, yes. It touched your tears. It touched your healing. It touched your mind. It touched your identity. It touched the places in you that had been tired for so long. But it was never only personal. When God brings a chosen one through fire, without letting the fire own them, something larger begins to move. When a cycle breaker stops bowing to the cycle loses a future voice. When a wounded healer allows God to heal the wound instead of worshipping it, someone else will one day receive medicine from the place that used to bleed. When a light bearer refuses to become darkness after being touched by darkness, rooms they have not entered yet become safer. When a spiritual warrior stops fighting out of pain and begins standing out of peace, the atmosphere around them begins to change. When a builder is restored after years of being broken down, they no longer build from ego. They build from wisdom. They build from compassion. They build from God. That is why heaven celebrated. Because when you won, something attached to your bloodline, your calling, and your future began to open. Not in a loud way. Not in a way that always makes sense immediately, but in a way that heaven understood. A pattern lost power. A future received protection. A calling received a cleaner vessel. A relationship you have not entered yet became safer because you are no longer bringing the same wound into it. A room you have not stood in yet became prepared to receive a version of you that no longer needs to perform for worth. A person you have not met yet will one day need the words that only a healed version of you can speak. And that is why your battle mattered. Not because pain is good. Pain is not good by itself. Betrayal is not good by itself. Loneliness is not good by itself. Delay is not good by itself. Misunderstanding is not good by itself. But God is so faithful that He can take what was meant to reduce you and use it to refine you. He can take what was meant to silence you and use it to purify your voice. He can take what was meant to make you bitter and use it to deepen your compassion. He can take what was meant to make you afraid and use it to teach you holy discernment. He can take what was meant to bury you and use the darkness as soil. That is what heaven celebrated. Not that you were hurt, but that hurt did not have the final word. Not that you were tested, but that testing produced endurance. Not that you were hidden, but that hiddenness formed roots. Not that you were rejected, but that rejection did not erase your ability to love. Not that you were delayed, but that delay did not make you deny God. You made it through something that was designed to make you forget who you were, and instead of forgetting, you became more deeply known to yourself and to God. That is victory. That is the kind of victory that does not always trend. It does not always get applause. It does not always come with immediate proof, but it shifts the foundation of a person's life. And when the foundation shifts, everything built from that foundation begins to change. Your relationships change. Your purpose changes. Your provision changes. Your appetite changes. Your tolerance changes. Your prayers change. Your decisions change. Your silence changes. Your yes changes. Your no changes. Your whole inner government changes. Because you are no longer being ruled by the same fear. You are no longer being led by the same wound. You are no longer being controlled by the same approval hunger. You are no longer being pulled by the same old shame. And when the inner government changes, the outer life cannot remain the same forever. It may take time. It may unfold gradually. It may not happen the way your imagination expected. But a person who has been changed by God will eventually stop fitting in places built for their bondage. That is why certain relationships may begin to feel different. And I want to speak about this carefully, because not every relationship shift means someone is evil. Not every distance means someone is an enemy. Not every ending means there has to be drama. Sometimes God simply changes the level of access. Sometimes He removes dependency. Sometimes He reveals misalignment. Sometimes He teaches you that loving someone does not always mean giving them the same seat in your life. Sometimes He allows distance because your healing needs room to breathe. And for those entering this season, relationships may begin to reorganize. Some people who only knew your wounded availability may not know what to do with your healed boundaries. Some people who loved your usefulness may struggle with your wholeness. Some people who were comfortable with your silence may feel challenged by your truth. Some people who benefited from your insecurity may call your confidence pride. Some people who needed you small may not celebrate when you begin to stand, and it will hurt. Even when the distance is necessary, it may still hurt. Even when the boundary is wise, it may still feel heavy. Even when God is protecting you, your heart may still grieve what you hoped the relationship could become. So do not shame yourself for the grief. Grief does not mean you made the wrong choice. Sometimes grief means you are finally letting go of what your heart wanted, so you can receive what God knows is safe. Do not chase people who only love the version of you that abandons yourself. Do not keep proving your heart to people who only accept you when you have no needs. Do not reopen old doors just because loneliness starts speaking softly. Do not confuse guilt with guidance. Do not confuse pity with calling. Do not confuse history with covenant. And do not confuse access with love. The people assigned to your next season will not require you to lose yourself to keep them. They will not punish the peace God gave you. They will not need you to bleed before they believe you. They will not make your boundaries feel like betrayal. They may challenge you, yes. They may sharpen you, yes. They may tell you the truth, yes. But they will not need the broken version of you in order to feel powerful. Trust that. Trust that God knows how to send people who can recognize the language of your healed spirit. Trust that He knows how to bring divine connections without forcing you to chase them. Trust that He knows how to remove counterfeit comfort and replace it with holy alignment. Trust that He knows the difference between loneliness and preparation. And while you wait, do not lower the value of your peace just because a familiar door is knocking. Your peace was expensive. It cost you years of learning. It cost you nights of surrender. It cost you conversations you never had. It cost you endings you never wanted. It cost you silence when you wanted to defend yourself. It cost you choosing God when your emotions wanted control. Do not sell it cheaply now. Protect what God has built. And as relationships reorganize, purpose will also begin to reorganize. Because once you are no longer living under the old verdict, you can hear calling more clearly. For a long time, pain may have made your purpose feel foggy. You may have asked, what am I here to do? Why did God make me this sensitive? Why do I feel things so deeply? Why do I notice what other people ignore? Why do I carry burdens I cannot explain? Why have I always felt like my life was supposed to mean something more? And maybe for years, those questions felt like confusion, but now they are beginning to become clues. Your sensitivity was not a defect. It needed healing, protection, and maturity, but it was not a defect. Your depth was not a mistake. Your ability to see patterns was not random. Your refusal to accept surface living was not arrogance. Your grief over broken things was not weakness. Your desire to build, heal, speak, create, guide, restore, or protect was not an accident. God placed something in you that the old season tried to bury. And now that the old verdict is losing authority, the assignment can become clearer. But do not expect clarity to always arrive as a full map. Sometimes clarity arrives as one next step, one conversation, one decision, one skill to build, one old habit to stop feeding, one place to leave, one place to enter, one truth to speak, one project to begin, one prayer to return to, one gift to stop hiding, one act of obedience that seems small but carries the seed of a larger future. Do not despise the small step. The small step is often where God tests whether you are willing to obey without needing the whole staircase. You may want the full vision because the full vision feels safer, but God often gives enough light for the next obedient movement. Not because He is withholding to torment you, but because walking with Him is part of the formation. If He gave you every detail at once, you might worship the plan instead of trusting His presence. If He showed you every outcome at once, you might run ahead without the intimacy that keeps your heart clean. If He revealed every door at once, you might confuse movement with obedience. So He gives the next step. And when you take that step, the next layer opens. This is how purpose often unfolds for the chosen one, not as a straight line of control, but as a living path of trust. You walk, you listen, you adjust, you surrender, you learn, you build, you release, you return to God, you walk again, and slowly, what once felt like confusion becomes direction. What once felt like random pain becomes wisdom. What once felt like delay becomes preparation. What once felt like isolation becomes consecration. What once felt like rejection becomes redirection. What once felt like silence becomes training. What once felt like loss becomes space for what was assigned. And as purpose reorganizes, provision will begin to reorganize too. But hear this with a grounded spirit. Provision is not always instant money. Provision is not always a dramatic miracle overnight. Provision is not always one huge event that solves every problem. Sometimes provision begins as an idea. Sometimes it begins as clarity. Sometimes it begins as discipline. Sometimes it begins as a connection. Sometimes it begins as energy returning. Sometimes it begins as peace that helps you make better decisions. Sometimes it begins as wisdom to stop wasting what you already have. Sometimes it begins as courage to walk through a door you kept avoiding. Sometimes it begins as a no that protects you from a costly mistake. Sometimes it begins as a yes that stretches your faith. Do not only look for provision in the form you expected. God knows how to provide through resources, but He also knows how to provide through timing, through strategy, through favor, through correction, through rest, through relationships, through creative ideas, through unexpected peace, through discipline that saves your future, through closed doors that protect your calling, through open doors that match your preparation. For those entering this season, provision may begin to align with assignment, not to feed ego, not to prove worth, not to make you better than anyone, but to support what God is asking you to build, carry, heal, create, or steward. So when provision comes, do not worship it. Receive it with gratitude. Use it with wisdom. Let it serve purpose. Let it support peace. Let it become a tool, not a throne. Because the same God who provides also teaches stewardship, and the same God who opens doors also teaches discernment. You are not being blessed just to prove that you were right. You are being equipped to become useful in the hands of God. That is a different kind of victory, a cleaner kind, a humbler kind, a kind that does not need to shout, "Look at me." It simply says, "Father, make me faithful with what you place in my hands." That is the spirit of this next season. Faithful with relationships, faithful with purpose, faithful with provision, faithful with attention, faithful with silence, faithful with influence, faithful with healing, faithful with the story, faithful with the testimony. Because your testimony is not just that God brought you out. Your testimony is that He brought you out without letting the fire turn your heart into stone. Your testimony is that you were pressed but not emptied of love. Your testimony is that you were misunderstood but not separated from truth. Your testimony is that you were delayed but not abandoned. Your testimony is that you were hidden but not forgotten. Your testimony is that you were wounded but not wasted. And one day, someone will need that testimony. Someone will be standing where you once stood. Someone will be tired in the same place you were tired. Someone will be tempted to call themselves defeated because the outside has not changed yet. Someone will be waiting for people to understand. Someone will be grieving the old version of themselves. Someone will be afraid of winning because winning feels heavier than they expected. And your life will carry a quiet answer. You will not have to be loud. You will not have to be perfect. You will not have to perform. Your peace will speak. Your wisdom will speak. Your boundaries will speak. Your compassion will speak. Your steadiness will speak. Your refusal to become what hurt you will speak. And that is why heaven celebrated. Because heaven saw not only what you came through, heaven saw who would be helped because you came through healed. Not flawless, healed, not untouched, healed, not without scars, healed, not without memory, healed, not without tenderness, healed. There is a kind of healed person who still remembers the pain, but no longer obeys it. There is a kind of healed person who still has scars, but no longer builds their home inside the wound. There is a kind of healed person who still feels deeply, but no longer lets every feeling become a prophecy. There is a kind of healed person who still loves deeply, but no longer abandons themselves to prove it. There is a kind of healed person who still waits on God, but no longer calls waiting rejection. That is who you are becoming. And now, I want you to let this become real inside you. You do not need to move your body. You do not need to do anything outward. Just let your imagination enter a quiet place with God. Picture yourself standing at an invisible finish line. Behind you is the battlefield. Not because you want to return to it, but because you are finally able to see what you crossed. Behind you are the nights you cried. Behind you are the doors that closed. Behind you are the conversations that never gave you closure. Behind you are the people who misunderstood. Behind you are the versions of yourself that tried to survive the best way they knew how. Behind you is the wilderness. Behind you is the pit. Behind you is the room where you kept asking, God, are you still here? And now, in front of you, there is a gate. It is not loud. It is not decorated for performance. It is not built for applause. It is simple. It is sacred. It is steady. And written across it is one word: peace. Not the peace of everything being easy. The peace of knowing you are held. Not the peace of everyone understanding. The peace of knowing God saw the whole thing. Not the peace of never feeling pain. The peace of knowing pain no longer gets to name you. Not the peace of having every answer. The peace of trusting the one who walks with you. Now picture yourself placing the old identity down before that gate. Not with hatred, not with shame, not with regret, with gratitude. That old version of you survived what it had to survive. That old version carried you through moments you did not know how to escape. That old version kept breathing. That old version kept showing up. That old version did the best it could with the light it had. But now, God is not asking that old version to lead. So in your spirit, say this: thank you for carrying me this far, but God is leading me now. Let that sentence settle. Thank you for carrying me this far, but God is leading me now. And now, picture the gate opening. You do not run. You do not force excitement. You do not perform victory. You simply walk through in your spirit as someone who has been seen by God. As you cross, you hear no accusation. You hear no old verdict. You hear no mocking voice. You hear no shame calling your name. You hear something deeper. The sound of heaven recognizing what earth did not see. The sound of the Father's smile over a child who kept going. The sound of peace welcoming you into the next season. And as you stand on the other side of that gate, let these words become a seal in your spirit. I survived the room, but I do not live there anymore. I crossed the fire, but I do not smell like smoke forever. I carry the lesson, but I release the chains. I honor the old version, but I follow God into the new. I receive the victory without returning to the old identity. Chosen one, that is not imagination only. That is a picture of what God has been doing in your soul. He has been bringing you to the gate of peace. He has been teaching you how to stop sleeping in the ashes. He has been teaching you how to honor what you survived without building your future around survival. He has been teaching you how to cross without needing the old room to understand why you left. And now, let this prayer rise over you. Father, I thank you for the one listening right now. I thank you for every hidden battle you saw. I thank you for every quiet act of obedience that nobody celebrated. I thank you for every tear that fell in secret and every prayer that came from a tired heart. I thank you that you did not abandon them in the wilderness. I thank you that you did not waste the pain. I thank you that you did not let the fire take what you placed inside them. I ask you now to seal what you have formed. Seal the peace. Seal the wisdom. Seal the discernment. Seal the healing. Seal the holy confidence. Seal the boundary that was born from truth. Seal the heart that refused to become cruel. Seal the calling that survived the pressure. Seal the identity that no human opinion can cancel. Father, protect them from old cycles that try to return with familiar voices. Protect them from guilt disguised as love. Protect them from fear disguised as wisdom. Protect them from chaos disguised as connection. Protect them from opportunities that would pull them away from peace. Protect them from the need to prove what you already know. Give them discernment in relationships. Let them recognize who carries peace and who carries confusion. Let them recognize who honors the healed version of them and who only wants access to the wounded version. Let them release what you are removing without bitterness. Let them receive who you are sending without suspicion. Teach them to love with wisdom. Teach them to forgive without reopening unsafe doors. Teach them to be kind without becoming available to destruction. Teach them to be gentle without becoming unguarded. Father, give them courage in purpose. When the next step is clear, help them not to shrink. When the path is quiet, help them not to panic. When the assignment feels weighty, help them remember that you do not call without carrying. When fear rises, help them hear your voice beneath it. When old shame speaks, help them answer with truth. When delay appears, help them wait without calling themselves forgotten. When doors open, help them enter with humility. When doors close, help them trust your protection. Father, bless their provision, not only with resources, but with wisdom. Not only with open doors, but with the character to walk through them well. Not only with opportunities, but with discernment to know which ones are assigned. Not only with increase, but with stewardship. Not only with relief, but with alignment. Let provision serve purpose. Let purpose stay surrendered. Let surrender keep them close to you. And Father, restore them in the deepest places. Not just what was taken. Make them whole. Not just what was delayed. Make them ready. Not just what was broken. Make them sound. Not just what was wounded. Make them wise. Not just what was lost. Make them complete in you. Let them stop living like someone still waiting for permission to heal. Let them stop living like someone still on trial. Let them stop living like someone still trapped in the old verdict. Let them stop living like someone whose peace must be approved by people. Let them live like someone heaven has already recognized. Let them walk like someone you have already seen. Let them breathe like someone who does not have to earn your love. Let them build like someone who knows the foundation is finally deeper. Let them love like someone who has learned the difference between covenant and chaos. Let them speak like someone whose words have been purified by silence. Let them rest like someone whose identity is not in performance. Let them rise like someone who remembers the secret place. And if there is any part of them still standing in the old courtroom, call that part home now. If there is any part of them still waiting for an apology before receiving freedom, call that part home now. If there is any part of them still afraid to hope, call that part home now. If there is any part of them still ashamed of needing time to heal, call that part home now. If there is any part of them still gripping the old identity because the new one feels unfamiliar, call that part home now. Let every scattered place come back under your peace. Let every wounded place come back under your truth. Let every fearful place come back under your love. Let every tired place come back under your rest. Let every hidden place come back under your light. And let them hear, deep in the spirit, what they have needed to hear. You did not just survive. You crossed over. You did not just endure. You became. You did not just wait. You were formed. You did not just lose. You were refined. You did not just cry. You were carried. You did not just make it. You won. You won when you did not become bitter. You won when you did not go back. You won when you chose peace. You won when you protected your heart. You won when you forgave without surrendering your boundaries. You won when you trusted God in the dark. You won when you kept a soft heart in a hard season. You won when you stopped asking broken rooms to name you. You won when you let the old cycle lose its throne. You won when you allowed God to make you whole. And heaven celebrated that. Heaven celebrated the private yes. Heaven celebrated the quiet obedience. Heaven celebrated the unseen restraint. Heaven celebrated the tears that did not turn into bitterness. Heaven celebrated the faith that kept breathing. Heaven celebrated the version of you that rose from the ashes without becoming the ashes. God smiled, not because everything was easy, because you stayed faithful. God smiled, not because you were flawless, because you kept choosing Him. God smiled, not because people finally understood, because He saw what they missed. God smiled, not because you had no fear, because fear no longer owned the throne. God smiled, not because the journey was simple, because the journey did not steal your soul. So now, walk into the next season differently. Do not walk like someone still begging for permission. Do not walk like someone still waiting for the old room to clap. Do not walk like someone still trying to prove that the pain was real. Do not walk like someone who believes every delay is rejection. Do not walk like someone who must shrink to be loved. Do not walk like someone who must perform to be chosen. Walk like someone heaven has already recognized. Walk like someone God has already seen. Walk like someone who knows peace is not weakness. Walk like someone who knows boundaries can be holy. Walk like someone who knows rest can be obedience. Walk like someone who knows hidden years can still be fruitful. Walk like someone who knows the Father's smile is stronger than human silence. And when life tests this again, because there may be tests again, remember what was spoken over you here. The old cycle does not get to rename you. The old wound does not get to lead you. The old courtroom does not get to judge you. The old fear does not get to shepherd you. The old identity does not get to wear your crown. You belong to God. Your story is held by God. Your future is not controlled by what tried to break you. Your calling is not cancelled by who misunderstood you. Your healing is not invalid because it took time. Your peace is not fake because you still have tender places. Your victory is not small because it was quiet. Heaven saw it. God recorded it. And something opened. Now, if this message gave language to what your spirit has been feeling, write this simple sentence in the comments. God smiled, I won. Not to perform, not to impress anyone, but to mark the moment, to let your own spirit hear you agree with what heaven already witnessed. God smiled, I won. And if you know someone who has been surviving quietly, someone who keeps showing up while nobody sees the weight they carry. Send this to them, not because they need more noise, but because they may need confirmation that God saw what people missed. Someone in your life may be standing at the invisible finish line without knowing they crossed it. Someone may be calling themselves defeated in a place where heaven is already celebrating their endurance. Let this message reach them if you feel led. And for those who felt a quiet pull earlier when I spoke about the 7-minute recalibration tool for mental clarity and focus, the link is in the description and the pinned comment. Only explore it if you feel peace. Do not move from pressure. Do not move from fear. Move from discernment. The tool is only a tool. God is the source. But if it supports what He is already restoring in your mind and spirit, you can look at it there. And if this message met you deeply, stay connected here, because this is a place for healing, discernment, divine timing, purpose, and the quiet strength of the chosen one who refuses to let pain have the final word. You did not come through all of that to disappear back into the old story. You did not come through all of that to keep apologizing for your healing. You did not come through all of that to stay loyal to the cage. You did not come through all of that to call yourself behind. You did not come through all of that to keep asking people to validate what God already knows. You came through because God kept you. You came through because grace carried you. You came through because purpose was still alive under the ashes. You came through because the Father was not finished writing. And now, as this message closes, let your spirit rest in the simplest truth. The battle was real. The pain was real. The waiting was real. The tears were real. The misunderstanding was real. But so was the grace. So was the protection. So was the formation. So was the hidden strength. So was the hand of God. So was the victory. And the victory is not only coming. In the deepest place, it has already begun. God smiled before people clapped. Heaven celebrated before earth noticed. The old cycle lost authority before your circumstances knew how to show it. The finish line was invisible, but you crossed it. And now, chosen one, do not go back to living like someone who lost. Do not go back to calling yourself what God delivered you from. Do not go back to shrinking so the old rooms feel comfortable. Do not go back to begging for the approval of people who only saw pieces. Do not go back to rehearsing the wound more than you receive the healing. Do not go back to the door that God already gave you strength to close. You crossed over. You are being made whole. You are being prepared. You are being trusted. You are being led. You are being restored. You are being called forward. So walk forward with peace. Walk forward with humility. Walk forward with discernment. Walk forward with a clean heart. Walk forward with the quiet confidence of someone who knows God saw the whole thing. And when doubt asks, did I really make it? When fear asks, am I really ready? When shame asks, what if I am still the old me? When delay asks, what if nothing changed? Let your answer be steady. God smiled. I won. Not because everything is finished, but because God finished something in me. Not because I never fell, but because I kept returning to Him. Not because I was never hurt, but because hurt did not become my home. Not because I had every answer, but because I trusted the one who carried me. Not because people understood, but because heaven saw. Chosen one, you finally did it. And all of heaven celebrated.